Louis, I am unbelievably disappointed with you. You have literally one job, and I mean one singular job, when it comes to hosting this podcast, and that is to come up with the bit that we do before the title sequence. And today you tell me that you've prepared absolutely nothing. You forgot. It just simply wandered out of your mind. Well, I'm telling you something. It is not good enough. And if you think you want to continue hosting this podcast as we move on to the final 2 episodes of Mine on Mine, you better buck your ideas right up. Have you got that?
Okay, why don't you get off my back? Because actually I'm with Vivaldi, so it's not an issue.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were a Vivaldi, Louis. You just do okay.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Davis on Davis podcast, the podcast where I watch Zac do some acting and I get a bit scared because he's actually quite good and I'm a child with no object permanence, so I think that he's literally transformed into another person. I am Louis Davis. I'm joined as ever by Zac Copeland-Green and we are watching the 5th episode of Mine or Mine by Russell T Davies. Hello, Zac.
Hi, Louis. How are you doing? Apart from being absolutely terrified by me.
I'm doing okay, apart from being absolutely terrified by you.
I'm great. Thanks for asking. I clearly have terrified you into silence, mate. I'm gonna have to talk this entire episode by myself. Louis nods. I'm just gonna do an audio description of Louis's faces as we move through the podcast. Right, we're going to Swansea because nothing's ever set in Swansea, so let's go watch a TV show set in Swansea. I can cope with that.
We start with an opening scene where Val, Candy and Leo are all trying to get out of like paying for stuff, or in Leo's case being in school, and whenever they get challenged they just say, oh, it's fine, I'm a Vivaldi. They're using their status to get stuff. You know, I don't think that's how it works, but in this show, that is how it works.
Yeah, and then really, like, the first shot that we see is of Val in the supermarket, and she's putting really expensive sort of champagne, and it's all sort of alcohol.
Yeah.
Juxtaposed with Leo, who's not costing anyone money, really, by leaving school.
Yeah.
And Candy's in the pub getting alcohol as well. So there's a theme of alcohol there.
Yeah, they are boozing and they are cruising. Well, Leo's cruising.
Is he?
We'll get to that.
We'll get to it.
I don't think it's cruising if it's socially acceptable and legal and fine in the open. I think exactly. That's we don't cruise nowadays the way we used to because everyone's okay with it, and so it stops existing. You know, it's like legalizing drugs. Suddenly, everyone's blasé about it. You've been to Amsterdam, no one gives a shit if you do. No one gives a shit if you're gay now.
We see a fourth figure who uses the same I'm a Vivaldi trick. I won't lie to you. The video quality, I don't know if it was my Wi-Fi or the copy I was watching, but it was a bit pixelated at this exact moment. And I was like, I was squinting trying to recognise the silhouette. I was like, I don't recognise this character. It turns out because she's not actually a Vivaldi.
Yes.
And it's just some woman who has realised that by pretending to be a Vivaldi, she can get some free stuff. And it just so happens that everyone's favourite Englishman, Danny, happens to be there. And he says to the shopkeeper, actually, no, this woman trying to take this pair of pants, a pair of trousers even, is not a Vivaldi. You know, I can vouch for that. And the shopkeeper lets her go anyway. And Danny tries to like take the trousers and say, no, you're not a Vivaldi. As a result, he ends up getting beat up by these 4 women.
I thought it was a handbag.
It could very well have been a handbag.
Maybe the video quality.
Details. Yeah, it was exactly. They didn't have 4K in 2003?
2004. So now we're at the Vivaldi household, and there's a massive queue of people trying to get in to talk to Max. They're sort of all waiting in the hallway. I'm watching it and I'm thinking, this is not fire compliant.
No.
You know, I think the moment something becomes like a public building, it you know, the standards go up because there's going to be so many more people in it at certain times. I'm like, you need to install some green signs, mate, because this is...
Counterpoint, though, because technically... Well, no, because it is all private land, but obviously, like, a lot of things are private land, but because when they become open to the public. So that's my question is, where does his home lie?
Is it that every building now needs the green stuff? Because
not your obviously a private residence does. And these are interesting.
Well, it's exactly. It's the difference between private property and personal property.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And also, to make matters worse, there are people doing work setting up the cameras for Vivaldi vision throughout this little bit, throughout this scene in the house. Like, there's a man on a ladder, and that also is only making matters worse.
Yes. But Iris has come in to say that people taking stuff without paying and saying they're Vivaldi's is not good for his reputation. The town's going to turn against him. He says, listen, I'm not charging anyone rent, so it's only fair. And she says, look, I'm only trying to help.
Yeah, and she's also saying that the shops are going to lose money.
Yes, yeah.
Which, again, point, Leo's not costing the school any money. If anything, by not going to school, he's saving them money.
Yes, exactly. I think with that, it's like, they're probably not... well, actually, no, I say that. If you're getting all the most expensive items, then maybe it's going to cut into it a bit. But I think since it is a large corporation...
And if one person's getting away with faking it, then it's implying that other people are as well.
No, exactly. There should be Vivaldi cards,
or just ID that says your last name on it.
But what if people do a deed poll?
That's actually very true. But
they need to be issued by the council.
But I can imagine in sort of the short term, it's going to takes a while to get a deed poll. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah, deed poll's pretty quick actually, as someone who knows about changing names. So already we're establishing that Max is king, but absolute power breeds some kind of Magna Carta, and if he's not careful, he's going to get Magna Carta'd.
There's a sort of we've seen a subtext so far of, I want to say, the mismanagement / the incompetence despite Max's effort. And I really like this opening also because we're 5 episodes in now, so we've seen 4 complete episodes. This is what I've been waiting to see since the end of episode 1, to actually see the Vivaldis in power, to see what they get up to, instead of all this mucking about with who technically owns what. And we're finally getting our desserts, which I'm glad to see.
They're at their peak.
We catch up with Danny after his kerfuffle, shall we say, with these four ladies coming out of the hospital. With his arm in a sling. Now, immediately I wrote down, he's got a broken arm. It turns out he's got a sprained wrist. We've all had one of those, if you know what I mean.
I really don't.
I actually did. When I was a student, got a repetitive strain injury in my right wrist, and I had to wear a bandage. No, a bandage, like a thing to basically support my wrist. And you can imagine, or maybe you can't, but you can imagine the jokes that got made when I told people I had a repetitive strain injury in my right wrist. But no, Danny's at the hospital on the phone to Maria, and Maria invites Danny to dinner, saying that Gethin is out of town on some work training. And just after she says that, Danny spots Gethin not away from Swansea, but indeed at the same hospital. So Danny goes full sort of secret agent and sort of follows him into the maternity ward, where he sees him meeting a woman and a newborn baby. Dun, dun, dun.
I'm sort of primed to see this and think, it's going to turn out to be a sister or something. But we'll get back to that, because it is quite interesting how they...
It seems too easy. It seems too easy to have...
But it's like, why would he lie, right?
Yeah.
Why would he lie about his whereabouts if that was the case?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the key thing that means that, we should be suspicious.
Yeah, exactly. Unless I thought... maybe is Maria lying to Danny? That was my first thought. But then it occurred to me, no. Gethin's the known liar.
Yes, absolutely.
In this scenario. We've seen his track record. So.
But now, Maria is taking Val house hunting with her with Val's mum and auntie. At one point she refers to her mum's, partners, we've been calling her, as the auntie. So could just be best friend, or could be sister, or could be partner.
Yeah.
And basically... they're looking around houses, and Val is like, oh, this is pretty good, but that house over there is even better. And then Maria's like, people are living there, we can't evict them. And she's like, why not? And it's like, because it would make us look bad. We do need to actually look good. And Val is getting evil with it, she's speaking like a villain. She's monologuing.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the house that we saw Maria in and take Danny to as her secret house. that she always wanted to live in but could never afford to live in.
Yeah, maybe.
It's never made explicit, but I'm pretty sure, based on the architecture and based on the fact that it's the sense that they could have any vacant and also non-vacant house they could want, and Maria takes them to a very middle class as opposed to upper class house, and is really like, this would be such a great place. And I think that's because Maria's motives are she wants that sort of middle class ideal of this house.
I think the house Maria wanted, though, why would she take her parents to see that if she wants it for herself? Also, that one was sort of surrounded by trees, and this one seems to have like more neighbours.
Okay.
Because they sort of talk about where they are. But they talk about this being sort of the neighbourhood with like all the dentists and something else.
Yeah.
There's this thing about like dentists making a lot of money, and like, hey, they're a type of doctor, so sure, but like, why do people talk about dentists specifically making lots of money? Maybe it's because it's not as NHS, so there's more like private stuff.
Yes. And I suppose there's also this juxtaposition with the work that it seems like you end up doing a lot of learning to do what some people might view as very little work.
Yeah.
Versus, people envisage doctors in hospitals saving lives in A&E, not sort of just putting mirrors next to your teeth. I apologise to the dentist community. I don't actually believe that. I'm just saying that I think it might be a preconception about the disparity between income and agency, such as why I think people have such feelings towards train drivers and their salaries.
Yeah. I would just like to say that please do not forget to anaesthetise us after listening to this podcast. Okay, we respect you. We respect what you do. Teeth matter. And of course, we will always support train drivers because trains are big and cool, and the only thing bigger than a train is a boat. And you're less exposed to boats unless you actually live on the sea or something. So
this message has been endorsed by the Davis on Davis podcast.
Yeah. Val also starts to like get fed up with her mum and her auntie, and she says there'll be no smoking in here. And they're like, why? And it's like, because it's gross. There's a big garden, you can go and smoke out there. She's fraying at the edges at this point.
Do you think, you say she's fraying at the edges, I feel like she's developing into a proper matriarch. She's now the queen bee of Swansea, and she's going to start acting like it.
Yes. But outside, the queen mother says that don't worry, she'll come back to us eventually. Which fair enough does happen, but it's like
it's like Lady Jessica in the Bene Gesserit.
Yes,
as a Bene Gesserit.
Yes,
taking over as grandmother,
Reverend Mother.
It's been a while since I read Dune.
It's also at this point that Maria admits to Val that she's cheated, but does not mention Danny, does not mention any of that stuff. Is just like there's a thing, and then Val is like, is it over? And she's like, yeah. Yes, it's completely, because she can tell, she can really feel the disapproval, and so she's like, actually, I'm not going to say that it was Danny, I'm not going to say that. And then Val is like, well then, why the hell did you tell me? Okay, you can play your games, don't expect me to approve, because she's saying, you're not going to find someone like Gethin.
Yeah.
Or like, how often does someone like Gethin come along? And it's annoying because we know that Gethin is a massive shit.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying he gets to pass as, any kind of desirable.
I think the interesting thing about this conversation is the fact that we know that Val had an affair, and we know that's where the emotion is coming from talking about Maria. Now, Val thinks that Maria has no idea about the affair, if I'm following this correctly. But Maria she witnessed Max throwing the eggs at the Eggman. Now, do we know if she's put two and two together? I don't know. But I think she might have some sort of inkling.
I think she does know.
Yeah.
And I remember in that director's commentary I was talking about in episode 3, the idea was basically Maria does know, and they were going to have her like sort of say to Val that she knows, but ultimately it doesn't really come about because it doesn't end up being important that she knows.
Yeah.
And later on this information will be made public, and then it really doesn't matter. Also, in the conversation with Danny in the car, she does...
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. You're right.
...say that they're having an affair, and he's like, oh, yes, I know about that. And she's like, oh, my God, I can't believe you also know that. And so she absolutely knew.
Not to disagree with the director's commentary, and presumably Russell T Davies himself, but I think in this moment, it is important that Maria knows, because I think that's why she feels comfortable telling her mum that she's in a similar situation, even if that's not made explicit.
Yes.
I think that's sort of...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's true that
Yes.
Val doesn't know that she knows. And then I think maybe Max might know that she knows, but I think it's less likely that Val knows that she knows. So, yeah. Thing is, there's a lot of this sort of who knows, who doesn't know going around. And in the commentary, and I do agree with this, it doesn't matter too much in the end.
Yeah.
Because stuff is getting put out into the open at a fast enough pace that, like, eventually everyone knows.
Exactly.
So now let's talk about Leo. And this is great. This is why I was quite excited for this episode, because we have made the podcast gay again.
Woohoo!
We had a little drought of gayness after the end of Bob and Rose, but the gay is back, and not just talking about the gay, but doing the gay, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been talking about the gay, but the show does the gay because Leo's foreman, who you may remember was arrested and is sort of being put on trial, and the charges have been dropped against Leo, but this guy is still in deep water. He comes to Leo and says, I need a character reference from you. I need you to say that I'm a chill guy. And Leo is like, no, I don't want to see you. Get out of here. You've really messed things up. He says, okay, well, if you do this, I will introduce you to Yanto.
Ooh.
This mysterious figure, Yanto. Ooh. At first he says no, but then he says, you know, what you're 16 tomorrow because it is his birthday tomorrow. You know, instead of just sort of thinking about it, you can actually do it. You can actually like meet someone. You know, you want that, and you know how to call me. And so basically the moment he's left, Leo's like, okay, fine, I'll call him. I'll say, yeah, I'm ready. And we get this montage of him getting ready and figuring out what look to have and spraying deodorant. This is big. This is big. Gay thoughts.
So having got ready, Leo shows up to the pub where his foreman basically is like, I'll just let you two get on with it. And he says this great line, now you two don't do anything I wouldn't do, except that, you know, obviously the two of you, I wouldn't do anything you would do. Ha 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 ha. That's so funny. Straight man making joke about gay men having gay sex. Basically, it's very quickly apparent that it's very awkward between the two of them, because there's a bit of there's an awkward silence. And the first thing Leo says, and this is proper put your head in your hands moment, he says, my dad owns the town. And then Yanto's like, oh yeah? And it cuts away.
Yeah.
This continues where the pair are having pints and not speaking to each other. This has to be the worst quote-unquote date that I've ever seen.
It's not even, so do you come here often? It's just zero dialogue.
Yeah. And to the point that Leo ends up going, okay, I'll get... Leo finishes his pint and says, I'll get the next two. And he's sort of rehearsing the questions at the bar. So there's clearly, like, he wants to talk to him, but evidently he's nervous because, you know, he is technically still one day off 16. I think it's important to note that throughout the show, everyone's called him gay and he said he's not gay. And then this is the first time that we, as far as we've seen, and I choose to believe that it's not just that as we've seen, he puts himself out there and sort of actualizes his sexuality.
No, certainly. I think this is certainly the first time he's actually actualizing, because before it's all been a business.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, and then by the time that he returns to the table, having rehearsed his questions, Yanto is no longer there. Instead, he sort of sat at this table with these three girls, drinking and I presume like gossiping and chatting. And that basically causes Leo to get up and leave.
We kind of cut away from that, and then when we cut back, he finally decides to get up and leave. So he's sort of just been sat on his own for a bit.
Yeah.
And then gives up.
We should say, as we discussed last time, Yanto Jones is played by Gareth David-Lloyd, and Gareth David-Lloyd is perhaps better known for playing Yanto Jones in the television show Torchwood.
Yes.
And its associated parent programme, Doctor Who.
This Yanto is spelt Yanto. In Torchwood, it's Ianto. I should say, the thing is, this Yanto is like 17 years old. And in Torchwood, he's like quite a bit older, mid-20s at least. And also, he has like a whole backstory and all this stuff. And so unless Mine All Mine is set like in like, you know, the year 2000, so enough time can pass until, you know, he shows up in Torchwood in Universe in 2007, obviously on TV in 2006. I think it's safe to say this is probably not the same character. Like, they just share a name and an actor. Essentially, what I'm saying is that a second Yanto has hit the podcast.
I was going to say, I think age in a show like Doctor Who, characters' ages don't match up. Case in point, Donna Noble's daughter, Russell T Davies confirmed in an interview that he knows that she's actually not the right age she would be on the show.
She should be like 13 tops.
Yeah.
But she's like 15.
But the RTD was just like, let's just pretend like a time wormhole appeared over Camden, sort of gave her 2 extra years. So I'm less worried about that. What worries me is the nature of the respective Yanto's sexual orientation. As someone who was very into Torchwood at one point, who read Torchwood novelizations, there were quite a bit of exploration in sort of the expanded material into Yanto sexuality, and it's sort of confirmed that he does identify as being bisexual in the novels. But then in Torchwood Series 3, Children of Earth, the best series of Torchwood, Freudian said there, he reveals that the only man he's ever properly fancied is Captain Jack. Whereas Yanto Jones in Mine on Mine is introduced as a gay boy who's just broken up with his boyfriend. So I don't think they're the same person based on that. Unless Torchwood Yanto Jones is just Mine on Mine Yanto Jones, who just basically clearly had some traumatic experience at 17 and 18 around his sexuality. Maybe it was a bad date with Leo, and he literally got up at the table and went over to girls and repressed and denied his attraction to men for many years after that.
Wow. Yeah, who knows?
Sorry, I'm a bit of a Yanto Jones fan.
No, of course. The thing is, like, once Leo has left the pub, that's the end of Yanto Jones. We're milking the Yanto Jones bit because, we're definitely going to put him in, like, the podcast art and, like, the description and all this stuff because, it's going to be the thing that people care about. I'm going to probably title it, like, a second Yanto has hit the podcast. But yeah, he's a very minor character here, and he might show up in episode 6 because I know that in the amalgamated episodes 5 and 6, he is in that.
Yes.
So he could be in the show next time, but he also just as easily could not be in the show next time.
I really want him to be, because I just feel like it's not enough, but I'm not sure,
Absolutely. This was very unsatisfying. You can show Leo as being very sort of nervous and out of his depth and all that stuff. But, we've got to see that resolved somewhere next time. And I want it to include the character of Yanto Jones with a Y.
Yeah. But, there are other fish in the sea.
Yeah, speaking of other fish, I think Maria's chat with Val has, really changed her perspective on things. Because she already invited Danny to dinner earlier in the episode. But now they're actually going to dinner. They're going to this Chinese restaurant. And she wants to speedrun it. She wants to get the world record any percent Chinese restaurant speedrun. She asks Danny, no starters. She's saying this to a waiter. No starters, no dessert, just as main. I'm not going to have any alcohol. In fact, I'm ready to order now. Are you ready, Danny? And I really sympathize with Danny here because I like looking at a menu and deciding what to have and weighing it up and coming to an informed choice. And he wants to do that.
I think that's very normal.
Well, yeah, but I went out with someone who wasn't that, would want to order straight away. And if it was one of those things where you order on your phone, he would order straight away, and then I'd need a minute, and then our dishes would come at different times. But anyway, she sort of coaxes Danny into just getting so sweet and sour, and then she's like, okay, yep, sweet and sour pork with rice. And all of this. In fact, I think he jokes that, you might as well pay for the bill now. And then she's like, good idea. Take this card, add 10% service. That way we can leave quickly when we're done. They have exchange 2 sentences each of dialogue. He asks, is this about Gethin? And she's like, I'm actually done here. And then as she's walking off and the waiter is bringing the prawn crackers, the first thing that you have, the appetizer that you normally get at a Chinese restaurant. He's like, that was lovely, thank you.
A fun fact, this scene is actually shorter than the time it took Louis to explain it. That's how quick Maria is.
Yes.
She makes an interesting point. I want to assure you, Louis.
Like Orpheus, I wanted to hold on to the memory of it.
I assure you, Louis, you are the normal person in any scenario where you want to read a menu and someone else doesn't.
Thank you.
But I suppose Maria makes a good point in that most Chineses will probably have... If you really like sweet and sour chicken, you will probably go to a Chinese restaurant and have their version of sweet and sour chicken, or at least I would, because I'm a very boring person. And she makes a point, and Maria does kind of point out that is the case. But I would still want to check, just in case, you went to a restaurant and they didn't have sweet and sour chicken.
Yeah.
You never know. Or they had something else.
Yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on black beans? You know the Chinese black beans?
Yes. Yeah. No.
You get the jar. It's got a guy's face on it.
Yes. My mum loves having beef in black bean sauce. So my thoughts are positive on black bean.
Good.
Don't you worry.
Good.
My thoughts on Chinese food. I love Chinese food. That's why I'm so grateful that in every major city around the world, usually Chinatown is next to the gay quarter.
Is that a thing? Is that a...
It's a thing, and according to anthropologists, it's because oppressed communities, i.e. immigrants and queer people, generally were sort of pushed to the same kind of fringes in major settlements, which is why in Manchester it's true that Chinatown and the gay village are next to each other, and it's true in London that Soho and Chinatown there.
No, you're right. I was trying to just remember in London. I was like, wait, Soho is next to China. Yeah.
So you can have a pint at a gay bar and then waddle over for a Chinese.
Although in classic London extravagance, I bet they have a Chinese quarter next to every gay area. There's probably one in Vauxhall.
Yeah.
There's probably one in... I know there's another gay area of London. I can never remember what it is. Is it Dalston, or is that just more like general hipsters? Psh, don't care.
The fact that I know Soho, I'm proud of myself for knowing that.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, after indulging ourselves on this incredibly short scene, let's go straight to the next plot line, which is Val, who is going to Stella's house to join the Daughters of the Gower. It's funny, I think when she mentions this to Max, it's on Vivaldi vision, or maybe that comes in a sec, but basically... The problem is that in the house, there's always Vivaldi vision, which means that the town ends up watching in on what they're doing, like it's Big Brother, like it's the Truman Show. And that ends up being a plot point within the Daughters of the Gower, which I should mention. Okay, so the Daughters of the Gower is this like kind of upper class society that Stella runs, and so she's going to Stella's house for like a kind of a house party for these Daughters of the Gower. Do you know what the Gower is, Zach?
Yes, it's the name of the peninsula in the southwest of Wales that sort of now is also an administrative region. And do you want to know a fun fact? It's only ever had a Labour MP except for during 2015 to 2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting, yeah.
I googled Gower.
Good.
So I could know what it meant.
It's on the edge of Glamorgan, which is historically the most populous county of Wales, although it's not one county anymore because it's been like split up. But because it contains Cardiff and Swansea, but not Newport. That's close to Cardiff, but it is in Monmouthshire. So another reason to not go to Newport. It's very interesting because when Val arrives, she sort of meets all these people and they do all their kind of weird character introductions, and Iris is there and they say, oh, she's a spinster. But almost immediately, the thing that it turns out that she learns is that, oh yes, everyone here loves watching Vivaldi Vision. They love seeing the home of Max. It's become a real hit. I guess because this was like made around the time of Big Brother's height of popularity. You can sort of imagine what the inspiration was when writing for like, what is something that seems off-putting but everyone would love. And of course, it's like the local Big Brother. That's
actually a really interesting comparison, eh?
Quite proud of that, actually.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, because we see Max address the cameras and talk to the audience on the screen and says, oh, if anyone missed the bulletin earlier, my son's had all the charges dropped against him, etc., etc. Whilst he's just sat there on the couch in his vest. And Val is absolutely appalled that everyone's watching him in his vest.
Yeah.
Because there's something very scandalous about vests, supposedly.
He feels very sad about being the only one without plans tonight.
Yeah. I've been watching Keeping Up Appearances. I don't know if have you ever seen any of it?
I've heard of it. I know what it's about. I know that my surname is Bouquet, not Bucket.
Yes, exactly. And
there was a joke made of that in the show Sam and Cat, and I know this from the 8-hour-long Quentin Reviews video essays, plural, about the show.
Well, there's a whole thing in Keeping Up Appearances where Hyacinth Bouquet despises her sister's husband, Onslow, for sort of being the epitome of the working class man. And he always wears a vest, and she despises that. So it reminded me of...
Onslow? Is he the capital of Norway or something?
I don't know.
But the most important thing about Val's time at the Daughters of Gower is that they talk about affairs they've had, and then they get her to open up about her affairs, saying, hey, this is a safe space. You know, everything that's said here stays here. You can talk. You can speak freely. And so she starts talking about Sam the Eggman and quite quickly divulges everything, all the details, you know, how they met, how they first kissed, all of this stuff. It seems like that's how she really is able to cement her place within the Gower community. And it's like she's not just there because, you know, she's in a position of power. She is now transcended the class boundary, let's say. She's in the in group and not just someone with a lot of money.
I've got some thoughts on this. Number one, I think it's worth pointing out that I'm pretty sure when she's sort of egged, no pun intended, into telling the story of her affair with the Eggman in great detail, she embellishes the details and adds a lot of more, I suppose, makes the Eggman sound sexier than the show has presented him thus far, because all the other women have described having affairs with young, attractive men. For instance, Stella had an affair with a 22-year-old Spanish teacher she had.
Yeah.
Nature of the exoticism.
Yes, I know there's a bit where they say that someone has gotten really into walking in the Brecon Beacons.
Yes.
And then they're like, oh, yes, no, she's really gotten into a man that lives in a cottage up there. And so you imagine a hiker, very athletic, very, you know.
Yes. And it makes me wonder, is Val creating these details to make the story sound like she's got a man just as sexy as everyone else is? Or is this how Val actually saw him? Because she did have an affair with him. And so, you know, when you're in love with someone, you potentially see them differently to the way that other people do, especially if you're attracted to them. And that's supposed to juxtapose the way that, as we discussed last episode, the show presents the Eggman as something almost disgusting.
But like, because she can be selective about how she's describing him. She can say, well, he has stubble. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, that's good then. And not just he's unshaven.
Yeah, exactly. And then my second point about this is, well, we see it's made very explicit that this is a ploy, because Stella's been a bit of an antagonist to Max and Val thus far in the show, and she kind of wanted to know about the affair before. And so I'm very distrusting of Stella taking Val under her wing here.
Yeah.
And we see that whilst Val is telling this story, Iris Price, the woman from the council, is sort of at the door being left out, but Stella winks to Iris, so clearly there's some ploy going on. The one thing, the subtext I noticed, which I thought was really interesting, all of the women at the Daughter of the Gower, apart from Iris, are all in this sort of self-proclaimed upper class status because of the men they are married to, / have been married to. Because in Stella's case, she's a widow.
Yeah.
And it's implied that the money comes from her husband. Val is only introduced to this place now that Max runs and owns Swansea, not because of anything she herself has taken agency in. The exception is, of course, Iris, who, as you say, they call a spinster, who has found her rank in society not because of anyone she's married,
because she's a spinster.
Yeah, because it's all because of her own hard work and dedication to getting to be the most important person in the council, beyond an elected official.
But in classic British class system, or in the classic British class system way, they look down on her for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I would posit that in most other countries, she would be able to look down on them for how they got to where they are.
Yes, exactly.
Apart from maybe Stella, because it sounds like she has done well as a businesswoman after her bereavement. But everyone else, no.
Yes, exactly. But then I could almost make the point of what she's only really doing is having projects to invest money in, and the money's only come from, one place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are my interesting thoughts on the Daughters of the Gower.
Because don't get me wrong, in other places there'll be a lot of people like this who have sort of been able to inherit or marry into their wealth, but they don't scream it from the rooftops. They don't take it as a point of pride. They try and hide that fact so that to not tarnish their reputation. Where here you have to show that fact to indulge to increase your reputation. It's very interesting. But yeah, at the end of the night, Stella asks Val to convince Max to let her build the arcade because it's just an arcade, it's just one thing, and it would just mean that everyone could just chill out if she just gets her arcade, and then it'll be fine. Max literally owns the town. He's doing fine. They both have stuff when before Stella was the only successful one, so it would just mean everything would be chill, and Val is like, you know what? Yeah. And it's funny because actually this plan would work if not for what happens later in the episode, because when Val eventually does mention this to Max, he's like, you know what, fine, whatever, let's do that. So it's funny that actually the Daughters of the Gower are gonna shoot themselves in the foot with what they do next, but in this moment Stella could have had a victory.
I will say I am going to withhold my judgment on this plan at the moment, just because we haven't seen the final episode, and I feel like there's got to be a more clever motive behind this, a cleverer motive.
You know what? That's fair. But now we get to, so we're going through each character's plotline, but obviously in the show they will be cutting between them, and so now we get we sort of get to see what Sam's night is like, Sam the Eggman, and it turns out that when we're introduced to the ladies of the Gower watching Vivaldi Vision, it cuts to Sam also watching Max on his own, because Sam is on his own, and so he's like, cheers Max, we're both on our own. Max being in his like vest and shorts, quite an image there. He sort of goes cheers to that, and then immediately stops watching Vivaldi Vision and instead starts watching a VHS tape of Vivaldi Vision from earlier that day. And this is one where Val is doing the washing up. Val's like, is it on Vivaldi Vision? And he's like, it's always on, Val. And she's like, oh, I don't want people watching us. And then Candy's come and is like, what, you saying it's on? You saying it's on? Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, everyone, come to my show. Come see me sing. It's in a pub. And that's like our scene transition. I should also mention that Stella is also taping Vivaldi Vision. She mentions that she sends the tapes up north, and that the Daughters of Rill adore Max. I gotta say, like, from my experience of Wales, in a lot of places, the best you're going to get is the local like social club, which I got to say, I do love a good Welsh social club, because the pints are like half the price of what they are in the southeast, so I'm always happy about that. But it just doesn't feel like there's all these sort of like there's all these kind of societies beyond that. But the idea that Rill has one, I think, is quite an interesting bit of world building. I don't know how reflective it is of reality.
It kind of gives me the impression that there are these secret cult-like underground societies throughout England and Wales.
Yeah, if you're from Rill, please write in to set the record straight.
I think it's a really nice. I think it's a clever transition to have Candy showing off on Vivaldi Vision on Sam's TV, to then cutting to see Candy performing that night in a pub.
No, definitely. But then you wonder, wait, so why was Sam watching it, or is he just an obsessive? It's because Val.
Yeah.
It's because he gets to see Val. That must be it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's...
But like, because like, I was thinking like, you're watching a tape from literally earlier that day.
I think it's because...
That's a bit...
I think you could argue the in-character reason is it's the moment where Max says to Val, and then Val says to Max, I'm going to Stella's tonight, and Max is left by himself. And I suppose it's almost cathartic. I'm going to say it's cathartic for Sam the Eggman to see Max be left alone by Val that night,
and then to know why, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I'm going with.
We reckon the most amazing transition up there with that one transition in the library two-parter where the girl is watching the Doctor on TV, and then she changes the channel and she's watching Donna on TV. You remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
The non-diegetic Welsh orchestral music playing in this intense scene becomes diegetic on the TV.
Yes.
And then it cuts, and it's like, this was proto that. Like, this came before. Like, this walked so that could run. Genuinely amazing transition. We love a good transition. We're very pro-transition on this podcast.
We love good directing. I think because it's a podcast about a writer, we're forgetting about the directorial decisions as well.
Absolutely.
But no, yeah, we're at the pub and Candy is performing her hit single from the previous episode.
I noticed that like her singing wasn't as good as when
No.
Mrs. Digby had directed her, but the crowd still applauds, so no one really cares. But Miss Digby is there.
Here's the thing with a lot of upstart pop stars, Louis, that I think is just a truth of life, especially in the 21st century. Anyone can lay down a tune in a studio. It takes a real star to sing it live. I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but all I'm going to say is there was one SNL performance where you could really tell how much auto-tune was on the album. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
No, so Candy's performing in the pub and everyone loves her, as Louis said. And the whole deal is if a boy buys her a drink, she'll give him a kiss. And we see a guy buy her a drink, but I don't think we actually see the kiss. But we do see Mrs. Digby, Candy's former agent. Sorry, I've been saying Candy. I mean to say Candy Zeta.
Yes.
Rolls in and is sort of angry with the whole scenario because she did not want Candy performing in a pub. She thought she was better than that. She thought she could do better than kissing boys. And so she rolls out of here and Candy Zeta chases her and says, where are you going? Where are you going? What's happening? And Mrs. Digby admits to Candy, first in sort of like, she just sort of says it, I'm leaving you after, you let me fall in love with you. And I thought she just meant it like, when you fall in love with someone creatively, like I'm in love with.
Yeah, like as a muse.
Yeah, like I love Cher.
Yeah.
I'm not,
yeah.
I don't want to marry Cher.
Yes.
But I love Cher.
Yeah, and you're my muse, Zac.
But then we end up getting a heart-to-heart between Candy and Mrs. Digby. And we find out that when Louis said that this episode is finally Mine or Mine becoming gay, and finally the Davis on Davis crew are getting to talk about gay stuff again, we're actually getting a double whammy. We're not just getting the gays. I mean, we're also getting the lesbians. Woohoo!
It's like buses, two come along in a row.
Mrs. Digby does that classic thing where her past life is a whole different life. And I wonder if this is the true explanation where she talks about leaving her husband because she realizes that something's missing. And then she saw Candy on television taking her top off, exposing her breasts, and it just something inside her clicked. And she realized, oh my God, I'm a lesbian. Everything makes sense.
Yeah, which I think is, I feel like seeing boobs isn't gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, is that really how it works?
But a part of me
has she never seen boobs before?
Exactly. Part of me wonders, how have you made it this far in life without seeing a pair of boobs? But then I suppose 2024, we're living in an age where, because of the internet, I think, 2-year-olds, I think every 2-year-old has seen a pair of breasts that was not their mother's.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So maybe things were different in 2004.
Yes, yeah.
Especially in Wales, No,
yeah. It is a bit of an odd moment also because, like, it turns out that this was her motivation the whole time. Because there was a mystery about that. Like, why is she suddenly shown up and why is she sort of obsessed with Candy? And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, it's fine.
I'm in two minds about this because on the one hand, it's quite heartwarming that Mrs. Digby is able to sort of, she's able to literally come out and able to sort of share the truths about her identity. But then also, how old is Candy? In my head, she's like 19.
About 20, I've been saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's say 19.
Exactly. And Mrs. Digby, she's a grown woman who was a dinner lady when Candy and Leo were at school.
Yes, I was thinking that.
So, in a sense, it's heartwarming, but it's a little bit creepy that the show's kind of implying that Mrs. Digby was stalking Candy to know when she was going to be at that. No, I think they say it explicitly that she'd sort of been following her around and sort of putting herself in a position of power. And I think, there have been certain things coming out recently in the news regarding like music producers and positions of power. So sort of that kind of relationship that Mrs. Digby has with Candy, part of me is like, that's a bit odd. You know, I know you're sort of having a heartfelt conversation, but I don't like these power dynamics.
My thoughts exactly. I think it was the age gap, and also the fact that it was an old dinner lady. It's just like, because if she just saw her on the telly, then does she need to have been a dinner lady? And also, how did she know? Actually, now I'm wondering, how did she know to go to the recording studio back in episode?
I think there was definitely some stalking going. There's something going on there.
Yeah, it was like stalker turned manager.
Yeah. The other aspect of this is the fact that Candy makes it very clear that, you know, she's not gay.
Yeah.
She's not in any sense of the word. And she says, doesn't she say something along the lines of, oh, I know, I almost thought I was broken. Because, you know, you read in the tabloids that every pop star's, you know, a little bit zesty these days.
A little bit kinky, she says, yeah. Which doesn't feel like the right word, because kink is quite a specific thing that can be done between both straight and queer couples.
Yeah.
But, you know, she also only ever refers to her as a lesbo, which it's not really a word we use nowadays. And I'm wondering, like, how offensive is that? Because she's just using it as, like, a matter-of-fact word. And I'm almost like, you know, it's almost not even worth going into it because clearly she doesn't really know what she's saying as usual. But yeah, it's making me do that noise, you know.
Yes, but I like Candy has some funny dialogue about being the trigger and not understanding metaphor. When Mrs. Digby says, you know, you're the trigger of, you know, me understanding that I'm a lesbian.
Yeah.
And Candy's like, do you mean triggering only fools and horses? You completely lost me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
And then that amused me.
That was amusing. I think that sort of, at the end, she kind of kisses her on the cheek and is like, "Oh, I've never kissed a lesbo before." But as a sort of, sorry to hear that kiss, you know. There is a good moment though where she says, like, "Is it good or bad?" Kind of that you like found this stuff out, and then she's like, "It's good," and then she's like, "Well, then it's good. Then what's the problem?" Which I think is quite a nice little moment. Just because obviously that is Candy not really understanding the societal implications and just the general sort of reckoning with the fact that your journey of self-discovery happened when it did, and I don't know, not earlier. Let's say, for example, or something like that. It's just something I can relate to, and so sort of knowing it's good, but also is it good? But she's saying it is good, which is kind of nice because sometimes you do need the affirmation of just being told that, hey, something is good, or being told, hey, you wanting to look at the menu is normal. Okay, that was actually very nice when you said that earlier, Zach, because I had been wondering about that. Not much, but at least a little bit in the
you're normal. Don't worry.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Thank you.
I'm gonna so not to sort of go back, but looking at a menu is one of life's one of life's pleasures, because there's a whole page, and often sometimes plural pages of possibility in front of you, and you exist in a space where you could eat almost anything on that menu, and once you've ordered, you know what's coming. And that sense of sort of anything can happen is lessened.
The quantum superposition collapses, but before that,
and you exist in this sort of this state of it. Wow.
I know, it's nice. And just to also just think that, like, hey, you know, there's all this food that it's possible to eat. It makes you relish the human experience.
It really does. I agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I'm pro menus.
Wait, this is a pro-menu podcast, yeah.
I try to go, speaking of menus, you'll never guess who Candy discovers on her way home. It's Leo. Leo read the menu.
Not Maria, who was actually talking about the menus.
Leo did not order anything off the menu tonight, and that is a euphemism. And that's the segue we're going through.
Yes.
She ends up sort of finding him on the road and asks him where he's been. And he doesn't really say, but they hold hands and skip home,
which is nice. It's funny because I was wondering if this was going to be like the moment of reckoning for Candy's like casual homophobia throughout the series, where Leo would have a go at her because like she's come to represent everything he hates about himself. And I was thinking, oh my god, is he going to blow up? But instead, it's just a sweet moment, so that's fine.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we don't have to confront that yet or ever. Who knows? It'll probably be fine. But yeah, no, I was just thinking, like, sort of, what if, like, Leo has had Candy's voices in his head this whole night? Because that's possible. They were, like, talking about that in a prior episode, so that has been set up as a possibility. But no, it's just a nice moment.
Yeah, we'll see.
We're talking about gayness. We're not talking about homophobia right now.
And then we go to the next morning, and the next morning is Leo's 16th birthday, and he's woken up by his parents and Candy singing him happy birthday.
Very, very cute moment. Candy says, I didn't have time, but I'll get you a present today.
Yeah.
Get you a copy of the Gay Times. Which almost feels like nice, because that's actually like a cute joke, and not just her saying you are so gay. Like, she doesn't say so gay, she says I'll get you a copy of the Gay Times. Which feels more like cute as like teasing
Supportive.
and not as the sort of relentless homophobic abuse we've kind of seen earlier in the series.
I tell you what, in a show like Heartstopper, series 3 is about to come out, someone gifting someone the Gay Times would be a wholesome, we accept who you are in this house, kind of thing. Whereas in this show, it's a joke.
Yeah, and then downstairs, Max, he gets a call, and we don't hear what the call is, but it's such a serious call that it makes the background music ominous. And like zoom on his face, and Candy is going on this whole time. Candy's going on about how, like, she says like Leo wants to see the Rugrats, or Leo wants to see the Wild Thornberrys, and then she says, you know, there's a movie where the Rugrats and the Wild Thornberrys or they're in the same movie now. That's insane. If that happened when I was 5 years old, that would have made my head explode. Do you think that like around the country there are just kids whose heads are exploding because the Wild Thornberrys and the Rugrats are in the same movie? And yeah, it's funny because this episode does have quite a few of those like cultural references of the time. Like, when Leo was trying to think of things to ask Yanto, he was like, "Do you watch Enterprise? Do you watch Angel?" This show exists in the context of what it came from. Yeah.
I remember. I think I remember the Wild Thornberrys Rugrats movie.
Yeah, I do.
Or is it just the Wild Thornberrys movie?
No. It was definitely around this time that a movie of them two came out. Or maybe you remember a different one.
Yes, absolutely. It's the 2003 Rugrats Go Wild.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I do remember that.
It's funny that that Candy is fixated on that, you know.
Yeah, and I missed the Enterprise reference.
Yes.
In the pub, I'm ashamed of myself.
Oh yeah, no, you should have gotten that. Yeah.
New Star Trek fan. Yeah. Even though Enterprise is usually agreed to be the worst Star Trek show amongst Star Trek fans.
Okay. That's interesting.
I only bring this up just thinking about Russell T Davies' complex relationship with Star Trek as a science fiction franchise. So it's interesting that
Does he have a complex relationship?
In the sense that he's written many, many times about how he much preferred Doctor Who, obviously.
Yeah.
Because he, growing up as like a young gay Welsh boy, he didn't feel like what Star Trek represents as a show with an institutional pseudo-military as its core wouldn't really have a place for him, whereas a show about a random guy who just sort of runs around the universe with anyone who wants to come into their blue box
and
is much more opening.
And sees his arch nemesis as his only intellectual equal, you know.
Even though now he's sort of said he loves the modern Star Trek for all its beautiful diversity, and has spoken about. He spoke at he did a combined panel at Comic-Con with Alex Kurtzman, who is the Star Trek equivalent of what there is. Alex Kurtzman is to Star Trek what Russell T Davies is to Doctor Who nowadays, and RTD talks about how he did watch Star Trek. So it's like, what's the truth here, bro?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's for another podcast. I have more thoughts on that.
No, yeah, that does actually sound pretty interesting. And plus, we wouldn't be talking about Doctor Who, so we could do it on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. What were we talking about?
Well, now we're going on to Gethin, who has just learnt from Maria from a call to his answering machine. So he hasn't picked up the phone because Maria thinks he's away.
Yeah.
And he learns that the charges against Leo are dropped, and she's saying, oh my god, he has £30,000 and he's younger than me. Isn't that insane? She's like she's kind of okay with it now. She's just happy that, you know, that money is not too far from her, and that she knows about it. And she's like, you know what, that's fine. We've got some money. That's good. And so he has 30 grand, and she knows that. And so now he's like, damn. Oh, no. Oh, yes, he yells bollocks. And this is interesting because basically we wonder, like, would he just have the money? Could he just slip the money back and just pretend that never happened? But he can't. And because at this point, Danny confronts Gethin and he says, I saw you in the hospital with that baby and like, you're not away this weekend, yada, yada, yada. Oh yes, because when he walks out his door, Danny is there. So like Maria said to him, if you really want to help me, you should just leave Swansea. And he's like, nah, I'm going to confront Gethin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at this point, when he challenges Gethin, Gethin says, that was my sister. And then Danny's like, oh, no, okay. And he's like, oh no, I forgot. I don't have a sister. And he just starts admitting to stuff. And then Danny just has to ask the most basic, like, what do you mean this? What do you mean that? And like, he'll just divulge it. Oh yes, and I have a gambling problem. And then Danny's like, should you really be telling me all this? And he's like, well, I'm a very honest person. And then Danny's like, apart from all the times you lied. Yeah, Gethin is... What do you think of Gethin, Zach?
It's a good question because let's talk about what happens in the scene. Gethin admits to having fathered a child with a one-night stand. He admits to having a gambling problem. He doesn't admit to anything to do with, because he took Leo's money and moved it into an account in his name. I think the implication is, with the admission of a gambling problem, that he's sort of potentially gambled it all away, or he's trying to use it to pay off his massive gambling debt in order to be able...
Yeah, I think it's paying off the debt.
In order to be able to afford to pay this child support he's got to pay.
Yeah.
But the culmination of the scene is he picks up the clock from his mantelpiece, and it's a lovely, heavy, weighty carriage clock. I don't know if you've ever picked up a carriage clock, but those babies are heavy, a lot heavier than they look.
Okay.
And after admitting all of this, he whacks Danny in the back of the head.
Yeah, it's funny. At this point, Danny is sat in a couch, and he's basically saying, I have to say, I haven't come here pure of heart. I also have an interest in Maria. But then he starts rambling about how, but it's interesting, the sort of the mating rituals we've kind of inherited from society. And I'm like, yes, queer studies king, Danny. Deconstructing the social constructs. Okay, they exist, but they only exist because we made them. Yes, go off, king. Okay. But anyway, the fact that he comes behind Danny while he's sat on a couch and whacks him in the head. Gethin is doing him like Patrick Bateman style. This is it invokes the scene from American Psycho, but without any of the blood, because he's using a blunt force trauma clock instead of an axe.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just whacked Danny over the head. Danny is knocked out.
Now, yeah, the question is, we don't know if Danny's unconscious.
Well, yes, exactly. How knocked out?
Dead. Because, as I said, carriage clocks are heavy. Now, I don't know exactly how heavy this one is, but a good blow to the head can, unless I'm entirely mistaken, as I think we discussed earlier, I'm not a massive police procedural / thriller fan. So I don't know.
You know what I think? I think Gethin is a disaster. He's a mess up. He can't get anything right in his life.
Yeah.
He is not. I don't think he has done the blow you're talking about. I don't think he is capable of a blow you're talking about. I think he has just knocked Danny out.
Okay.
I certainly hope so, because
it's then that we get an image in a scene's time of he ends up putting Danny's body into the boot of his car and puts his phone in the bin. So that's what raises it into question for me as to whether or not Danny has accidentally died. Now, to answer the original question, what do I make of Gethin in this scene? I think it's the fact that his life is a massive web of lies. And we've seen that from the moment we've met him, and he lied about, the fact that he broke up with Maria because of this random girl. But then it turns out this girl at the bank, it was all a lie. She didn't even know who he was. I think the second he's been confronted by Danny, he's tried to carry on with the web of lies with his sister, and then immediately realised, no, I've fucked it. And so the second one of the threads of this web of lies loosens, the whole thing just falls apart. And that's why everything comes out. And that's why he realized he sort of showed Danny his real self. And that's why he reacts with the violence. And because no one gets to see his real self.
Yeah.
And we kind of see for the first time the real Gethin and not the Gethin behind the covers or whatever.
I mean, yeah, but like, it's insane to think like he has a kid and he has a gambling problem, and he was able to buy an engagement ring for Maria, even if he didn't present it to her romantically. And he probably has a drinking problem because he keeps showing up drunk.
Well, yeah, he definitely has a drinking problem.
A big thing that means that he's sticking around is because of this perception of him as someone with money, and so to find out he's in debt.
Yes.
You know what it is? It's Trevor from Bob and Rose.
Yes, it is. But made even more messy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, like, I think his sort of problems are more like severe, while Trevor it was a bit more of a farce.
Yes,
because it was like getting sued for copyright infringement, which, granted, is going to put you in debt, but it's silly. Well, Gethin says that when he admits to gambling, he says, I didn't throw it away, I gambled it. That's more noble. And it's like, it's not, mate. It's not, mate. But the fact is, like, no one's laughing at that. But copyright infringement, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Max shows up at Sam's house and says, don't ever call my house again. And Sam is like, look, you don't like me, but you've got to see this. And so goes in, he explains, I went on my walk this morning. When I came back, I had 7 missed calls on my answer machine. I thought it might be something to my dad because he's ill. Yada, yada, yada. He plays them. Turns out all the ladies from the Daughters of Gower have all called him and like asked him, I've heard of your services. Could you provide me with your services? I need a dashing, handsome man.
Yeah.
So Stella does it. The other ladies do it. Iris also does it. Iris also sends a message.
It reinforces the fact that even though we saw this separation between Iris and the other women, that wink from Stella to Iris shows that Iris was in on this game.
Yes.
To catch Max and
Certainly. We knew from the dinner that she was definitely working for Stella, and it turns out that even if this is the thing, is even if she's not in the inner circle, she's happy to be in zone 2 because you still get privileges if you're in zone 2.
And I imagine there's a sort of, she thinks by doing all of this maybe she will be able to get into that inner zone and sort of make up for the fact that she's not inherited the wealth from a man in the same way.
Yeah, I think what I was saying earlier is that, like, if they hadn't sent these messages, then Val would have convinced Max to let Stella do the arcade, and that would have been that. But because of this, Sam says, Val made a fool of you, and now she's making a fool of me. They're making a fool of us. And so Max is really annoyed by this, to the point where he decides that he's going to go Pol Pot on his own sister. He takes the Val division to their house. Actually, let's do that in a sec, because first we sort of see this play out from the perspective of Leo's birthday party. Everyone's there in the living room. They're all like giving Leo gifts. It's very nice. And then Val's auntie looks at the TV and is like, I hate to be the ghost at the feast, but you got to see this. And they're seeing that Max has taken the Val division to Stella's house and he is evicting her. And so naturally we get quite a few of these. The racing out of the house, jumping into a car, drive as fast as you can, get to the place. We get another one of those. Candy and Leo stay behind, but Val's mum, Val's auntie, and Maria, who's trying to phone Danny but can't get through to him, is like, Danny, I need you now. You're the only person who can like keep Max in his place. And so of course if Max's handler is incapacitated, then Max is gonna go beast mode. He's hell hath no fury like Max.
So when we arrive, we find out that we've arrived at Stella's house because it's not entirely clear where everyone's rushing off to. I should note, did we mention Maria has phoned Danny?
Yes.
And said, forget about last night. Where the hell are you? You need to come and help sort this out. You're the only person that can sort Dad out.
Yeah.
And that's when we see Gethin throwing the phone in the bin and putting the body in the car.
Yeah.
Anyway, We find out that everyone's going to Stella's house. There are a load of removal men removing all her property out of the house. And it turns out that that's where the camera crew are. And Max is there. And Max officially says to Stella that she's being evicted from his private property and trespassers will be prosecuted, and that all her private property is going to be taken right to the edge of Swansea, right to the edge of his property, and just left at the border. And she is not allowed to come back. And the daughters, they're all there to be disbanded.
Yeah.
And Stella's house is now to be his and Val's official residence.
Yeah. There's a bit of irony here because Val was running, what if we just evicted someone?
Yes.
And she got her wish.
She did. And then at this point, Stella's like, you can't do this. You can't do this. And Max is like, well, I can.
Yeah.
And then Val's kind of like, why are you doing this? What on earth are you doing? And this is when Max says live on Vivaldi Vision about having heard the messages on Max's answering machine that he knows that Val has been boasting about her affair.
And Leo and Candy see this on the TV.
Yes, they do.
So now they're also in the loop. So at this point, everyone knows.
Yeah, everything is. The whole town now is exposed to this. And Max, after this, he makes his way back home. And we see on the telly that Stella's trying to argue with the police, but the police have showed up and there's nothing she can do because it is private property. And Iris shows up and tells Max that he's essentially running the town as a dictatorship. And she says, I know now we know Iris is sort of in cahoots with Stella, so she's sort of not to be trusted if we're on the side of Max's things. But she's very, very clever at sort of getting people to agree to things.
Yeah.
Because she says, I know, Max, that your number one priority is Swansea, and you never want to do anything that doesn't benefit, this town and this people. But I think you should allow the people to choose you, and you should have. She doesn't use the word referendum because I feel like the word referendum wasn't in popular usage until the 2010s.
No, yeah. She just calls it a vote.
Max in or max out.
Yeah.
I think it's because Iris is supposed to be very persuasive and her argument is sort of buttering Max up. But he agrees very quickly to shake hands and say, yeah, we'll have a vote, even though I think it's very, very clear he's going to lose. I reckon. He's just on television. He's just evicted his own sister from her home. You must surely think, as a resident of Swansea, you could just be booted out of your own home like that.
It certainly sets a precedent, but it's like, yeah, I know, because it's like if he says no to a vote, then that's sort of an admission that maybe the town doesn't want him. He has to. But also, I think maybe he does genuinely believe that the town should want him, and that maybe the town does want him, and so it's like. It's sort of, even though he knows what Iris has been doing this whole time, even though that's all out there, it's still the simple fact that when presented with these kind of logical arguments, he can't say no, because to say no would highlight some kind of hypocrisy or some admission of knowing that you're not popular. So he has to say yes. He has to say, let's have that vote.
Exactly.
So it's quite clever, yeah.
And I think it goes back to something, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the episode. One, it's worth noting that scenes between Iris and Max in Max's house bookend the episode pretty much. It's one of the first things we see and it's one of the last things we see.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the episode, she says that Swansea is a boom town. Not only is that well, it's not a reference, but I'm retroactively making it a reference to
it's a premonition.
That's
the word
of a Doctor episode title. But she sort of describes how at the moment Swansea is hot stuff because of all of this bizarre business with the Vivaldi inheritance, but it won't be for much longer.
And also, I think if you want your investment to be secure, you need it to be a dictatorship like Singapore and not a dictatorship like most dictatorships,
Yeah. You want this to be what Plato envisioned of dictatorships.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But we need to raise the next Vivaldi from birth to be a leader,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of what Max thinks he is / aspires to be, and I'm now thinking is Max a self-aware protagonist?
Yeah, he certainly does have main character syndrome.
Yeah.
It's just the one time that actually ended up being the main character, you know.
Yeah. But that's not the end of the episode, is it, Louis?
No, we get one final scene. So Val has gone to her mum's house, and her mum and auntie are saying, you know, hey, because for Val, this is really awful. She has been shamed publicly. The society that she was getting involved with are now disbanded. And so Val's mum says, at this point, you just need to put him down. Max Vivaldi has got to die. And it's like, are they serious? Do they mean that? It's not just some kind of social murder.
Yeah.
Oh no. They have to kill him. They have to end his life. They have to murder. They have to use their skills. Maybe that's what the whole Bene Gesserit thing has been, but they can just, because also she says that it has to be what happened to Val's dad, something like that, or like, I think the implication is that they've done this before. And it's like, wait, did she murder Val's dad?
They claim, seem to imply it's a tradition.
A tradition, yeah.
And it's the only way that women in their family survive. Ominous.
I feel like that's saying something about something. I don't know. Is that the only way? Because, like, you know, say what you want about Max, he was just going to have his dad declared insane.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like you could make a case with Max if you bribe the right people. No. I know what this is. Okay. So basically, if Max is going to be murdered, then the title passes to Leo Vivaldi, and we were talking about the Bene Gesserit and all that stuff. Leo Vivaldi is Paul Atreides.
Is he the Lisan al-Gaib?
He is a Lisan al-Gaib.
Wow.
Well, the Lisan al-Gaib, but yeah.
Funny. I was thinking more you were going to say how if Leo inherits it because he's a minor, theoretically everything would be managed by his parent/guardian, who would be Val.
Yeah, but he is 16.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, but that's the thing is, like, regents, historically, a regent, what was the age of maturity for a monarch? You know?
Well, I get historically, I think 16 in the UK is the age of adulthood up until the mid 20th century.
Okay, I'm wondering if, like, in medieval times, it was like 12.
Age for adulthood. That's a weird thing to say.
In 1508. Because, I mean, I guess, because I know, is it right that bar mitzvahs are 13 and bat mitzvahs are 12?
Yes, because that's the age that in biblical times you'd be married, because that's the age you're considered fertile.
Okay, wow.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, just that aside, there is a historical precedent of surprisingly early maturity. And so maybe Leo wouldn't need a regent at the age of 16.
Yes, that's true. I made a fundamental error. In the 20th century, it's the other way around. Being an adult happened at 21 and it was reduced to 18.
Okay. Well, in that case,
who knows?
Look, if it's 18, then Val has 2 years to set herself up for life.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think that's more than enough time. She's a very hardworking, determined woman. And yeah, let's see how hard she can girl boss. But let's hope she doesn't girl boss too close to the sun.
Yeah.
To be honest, that is mother. Because if you think of cunt as, like, the definition of, like, femme but theus.
Yeah, exactly.
What's more cunt than this?
And that brings us to the end of the penultimate episode of Mine on Mine.
Yeah. In syndication, most of this episode was cut out. And so by hearing us talk about it, you're getting your own peek behind the curtain of the missing episode. But I think you said that it feels quite instrumental. It's like, how do they cut a load of stuff out? Because Max's downfall is important, because we've seen his rise at the end of the last, and then his sort of peak at the end of the last episode. We've seen how absolute power corrupts absolutely, and you know, the Vivaldis were walking around like pre-Magna Carta royalty, and then the power got too much and Max acted out of impulse, out of emotion, but not out of strategy. And it's all fallen apart. And now there's going to be an election. And is he going to win? Seriously, is that really... is he going to somehow win, or is he going to lose, as we would kind of expect? Who knows? We'll have to find out next time. Also, what the hell is happening with Geffen and Danny?
Yeah. Is Danny dead?
But like the show didn't have these kind of stakes, and suddenly it does. But also, like, if he has killed Danny, Maria will know where Danny was last. And I'm not even saying that because Maria will find this out. I'm saying that because the police will find this out. Like, I feel like it's gonna be quite easy for Gethin to be like suspect number one, and then they'll do the DNA stuff and find Danny's DNA all over the place. What's Danny playing at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What's Gethin playing
exactly.
at?
Exactly.
We know what Danny was playing at. He didn't go so well.
No.
He didn't win the game there, but you know.
But I suppose we'll find out next time in our next episode.
We will. So all that remains for us to say is thank you for listening to the Davis on Davis podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis. You can follow me on Instagram at Louis on Air, Twitter at Louis on the Air. Zach, do you have anything to plug?
So you'll remember last time. I mean, I hope people remember last time, because it appears that the last few times I've not remembered what I've said last time. That I was helping. Was it my aunt? Was it my aunt? It is my aunt. Aunt Viv. Aunt Viv is opening a discount supermarket. Where you can, as we discussed last time, you'll find us at Viv_Aldi, and we're currently testing some new products, and we are on the 6th wave of our new range of sweeties, and so we're happy to launch the 6th edition. So you can
oh god, I think I can see where this is going, but I also have no idea, because if it is what's happening, then I don't have enough knowledge to be sure. But to keep going, okay.
I think you've probably got it. So go to my aunt's discount supermarket, try our new range of sweets, and because it's still product testing, send emails to candy-zeta@vivaldi.co.uk.
And is it because Zeta is the 6th letter of the Greek alphabet?
The alphabet, yeah, and I suppose it's sort of generations.
See, I know all the letters because I did maths. I do not know what order they're in, because famously mathematicians can't count.
Here's the thing. So I learned ancient Greek at school, and that probably tells anyone listening to this conversation exactly the kind of school I went to, and I'm terribly sorry about that.
We forgive you.
We got taught the Greek alphabet, and then I took ancient Greek properly as an option to GCSE and A level, and eventually I did a degree in it. But I did not see the point in learning the Greek alphabet. That felt like a waste of my in sort of learning the order of the Greek alphabet. I just learned how to write and read it, and then I could learn the words using that alphabet.
Yeah.
And then it got to university where I was sort of reading ancient texts using a dictionary, and I was like, I actually have no idea how to use the dictionary because I don't know what order letters come in. So I had to sort of, at university, start learning the order of the alphabet.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I think for the most part, it's kind of follows the order of the Latin/English alphabet, with a couple of things in odd places that you get used to pretty quickly.
I know the first three because alpha is the least penetrating but the most harmful. Beta is moderately penetrating, moderately harmful. And gamma is the most penetrating but the least harmful if you know your physics.
I vaguely remember that from GCSE physics.
It's types of radiation.
Yeah.
Don't swallow alpha particles. They will give you cancer.
Ooh.
That's why it's very important, if you're living in the southwest of England, to have those things that channel radon up into the atmosphere above your house, so that you're not getting radon on the ground.
Right.
Because if you inhale radon, then it decays inside you. And because it's alpha decay, if alpha decay happens outside you, it's fine. But if it happens inside you, then it really fucks you up. Because your skin can stop it, but if you've breathed it in, then your lungs will just get hurt. So that's a PSA if you're living in the southwest of England. The southwest of England is insane. As a part of the country, like, there's so much weird stuff about the southwest of England. I won't get into it, but, you know.
I actually had no idea about the I'm now looking at a map of radon risk levels in the UK, and I had no idea.
I know, right? It's like, what the hell? And, like, that's just been the case throughout history. The southwest of England has just been this place where people die earlier of, like, unexplained causes.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been going for over 2 hours. We've just had, like, we've had a lot good stuff to talk about. It's just
exactly. We'll end it there.
Yeah. Goodbye.
All right. Bye, everyone.